We are officially in the month of late November, and the Western Conference is absolutely insane. As you can see from the thumbnail, those are the current standings for the Western Conference. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the number one seed. And I just want to say, as an NBA analyst, as someone who really watches and covers the game, if you've been listening to my podcast for all summer long, this should not be a surprise to a lot of people how good Minnesota has been to start the year. I kept saying Rudy Gobert year two leap with Anthony Edwards taking that next step into his eventual superstardom, with Karl-Anthony Towns as a guy that can space the floor, attack closeouts, and be a positive impact if he can take other leaps in the other areas on the defensive end and the playmaking, which he's done so far the entire season. Even though he didn't start off the season shooting well, he's picked up his shooting to a severe level where Cat is literally having like a 70% true shooting in a span. Only Steph and Jokic, I'm pretty sure, are the only players that have done that this season. Maybe Kevin Durant's in there too, but that's where the West is right now, man. It's been a wild, wild West as we anticipated. Jamal Murray is currently hurt for the Denver Nuggets, and they've slid a little bit. They're the third seed now. OKC, a team that sent us home a couple nights ago. That's right. Chet had like what felt like 50, but he hit like a crucial game tire to force that game into overtime, and then we lost that game. So OKC is now the number two seed. I'm pretty sure that they're 10-4. It's been a crazy West. I want to give a lot of credit to the Dallas Mavericks all season long. They've started out their season very well. As I told you in the season preview for Dallas, they were one of those teams that was very confusing to rank because their front court presence simply wasn't there. But obviously, the star talent with Luka and Kyrie and how they could create 3-point shots was always going to be there. I think Dallas might dial it back a bit as they continue on, but they're still a very potent team. But as we all know, one of my favorite teams beyond the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Sacramento Kings, another team that we talked about where in the podcast I did with Deuce, we literally spoke on how good this team could be. I predicted that this team could for sure have home standing in terms of finishing in the West as a top four seed with Minnesota. I almost felt inclined to say that they could be the number one seed, which still isn't out of, reach for them because if you remember, Fox got hurt at the start of the season. They dropped a couple games. I'm pretty sure they're on like a 6 or 5 game win streak at the current moment, and now they're top four in the West yet again. So even that's not crazy. But this overall top four, top five isn't very crazy to me. OKC, I said I wasn't sure exactly where they rank, but they have the talent to compete with a lot of other players. They have the wings. Shea is really taking steps into becoming a superstar as well. I mean, they just have so much talent and they're young. A big part for me when it came down to predicting the Western Conference this year, obviously it's an 82 game season. So this current sample size isn't going to be crazy. Each month we're going to, by the way, come back and check in on the West. But a huge part of it for me was if you're a younger team, how disciplined you are defensively, or if you're not that, how potent are you offensively, and how consistent are your players? And I mean, so far, these top six seeds are really exemplifying how that goes. The star power is a very crucial thing for a bunch of these teams, but the depth and how they've edged out the teams they've had to play so far is a huge part of it. Now, as we can also talk about Golden State, a team that a lot of people didn't know exactly where to rank. They're currently number 10. Draymond is ejected for being the best UFC fighter of all time by putting Rudy Gobert in a headlock. Very crazy stuff that we saw from that. But overall, for me, as a Warriors fan, it's been very tough seeing this team lose 6 games straight where they're better on the road than they are at home currently. But we also haven't seen an extended sample size of this team healthy with Draymond, Steph, Clay, Chris Paul, all these guys out there on the floor. I still think this team can be a good regular season team. I'm not going to doubt them despite how many games that they've lost. But in terms of them being a tier one team, I kept saying all offseason for me, as good as Golden State's been, the reason why they've been able to skate without having a number two scoring option is the depth that they had in terms of wings, and also Andrew Wiggins playing at a much higher level to kind of replace that production. Klay Thompson has never really been a consistent offensive player all the time outside of his scoring gravity from his 3-point shooting. But he started out his season very rough. A lot of fans want to trade him. A lot of fans are pretty much done with the Klay Thompson experience. But for me, it's a very long season. You got to see how these things shape out and how this team looks when they're healthy. But I still think relying on the variance of Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson as offensive players isn't exactly a winning recipe. But this, for me, as I said in my season preview of the Warriors, feels like a transitional period where they're just trying to compete, see how far they can finish, and then make other moves to really add to this roster moving forward for next year. So those are things that interest me so far. The Houston Rockets, they fall into 7, but at one point they were a top 5 team in offense and defense. Even last night versus the Lakers, you saw Houston play very inspiring basketball. Operation Shingun is clearly the best player on that team. These Jalen Green talks have to stop. If you paid attention to what Shingun has done for the entire season, he's been a phenomenal 5. I think he's a top 10 big for sure. He's been playing phenomenal basketball, but the defense of the Houston Rockets is the reason why their record's been what it's been, despite that they started out their season, I think, 0-2/0-3. And today we play them. As a Warriors fan, it's going to be very fun to see how that matchup pans out because Golden State is in desperate need for a win, and Houston is not trying to slide too much. But this is a game that the Warriors absolutely should be able to take. There is no Draymond, so that does hurt the team a bit. But in terms of the offensive punch, I think Golden State can trade with Houston. It just comes down to execution at the tail end of third quarters. For most of the season, Golden State's been a pretty good third quarter team, but the fact that they've let their foot off of the gas to close out the third quarter, and they've been one of the worst fourth quarter teams in the league, is a big part of why their record is what it is. But I'll be streaming that game tonight on playback with my guy KB, so make sure to tap in for those types of things. We're going to be having more consistent content. Also, the podcast for today, I'm going to have to delay. I had a lot of things going on this weekend, but it'll be coming probably Tuesday. So stay posted for that. But overall, the current state of the Western Conference, I plan to do at least like a month check-in on the West and the East. I'll be making my video about the Eastern Conference, be posted for that either Wednesday or some other time this week. But peace out, people. Have a good one. Got to get to work. I'll catch you guys in the next upload on this channel. If you like the content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know what you think about the state of the Western Conference and how things are currently looking. I think that the landscape is a very interesting one, to say the least. There's a lot of things that we have to see shake out in the West, and these things change, rapidly. I mean, a bunch of these teams that we're seeing are literally 1 to 2 games separated. So it's not a big enough sample size, but it's what we have. It's the current start of the season. We're officially 10 games in. I think for the next podcast that will be coming, we're going to be trying to dissect every team, at least maybe 3 or 4 comments about them, and see how that goes. But peace out, people. Have a good one.